Hey everybody, Hoang here, and today we have for you the competitive BT7 tier list that was made by a bunch of people from the Hoang Zero Discord and I. Joining me today, we do have one of my mods, Zero Raven. Zero, say hello.
Hello, hello.
Alright, and so Zero and I will be going through what we think is going to be the competitive forefront for the BT7 English scene. All the lists that we have on the screen are decks that we think may have some sort of competitive viability to a certain extent. Any decks that we didn't list, for example, Hexablow or Shoutmon, we do not think will do well enough to warrant being placed onto the tier list. So you can assume those decks are more than likely going to be in the C or D category. But regardless, let's get started. So the first deck that we're going to talk about is Jet Sylphimon, or Yellow Hybrids. Yellow Hybrid is one of the strongest, if not arguably the strongest deck going forward into the BT7 format. It was the deck with the most results in the Japanese meta during their BT7 iteration, but it did receive significant nerfs in the fact that Reinforced Memory Boost is at 1 and Mega Digimon Fusion is now at 0. How do you feel about this one, Zero?
I agree. I think the deck is still very good, obviously. It probably got away with the least amount hit out of all of the quote-unquote problematic decks, right? With the exception of Jesmon, which we will go into later. But of the two prominent Japanese deck that saw a lot of result, this got by far I would say less significant hit than Blue did, because I think Ice Wall for Blue is a much more significant hit. That isn't to say Reinforce isn't a pretty huge hit, because it does decrease the threshold of this deck. But it's still very variable. It does the strategy that it likes to do, which is, evolve to Jet Sylphie, heal for 1, do a poke, control the board state, maybe go into Serafi to heal an additional 1. Just in general, just being a nuisance. It's almost an evolution of security control, in that it just keep healing out of lethal range and force you to deal with annoying security.
Right, and so during our testing, because we've spent like a week now, I believe, testing BT7, we've been just playing matches back and forth, and Yellow in testing actually felt very human. It felt very vulnerable. A lot of decks were able to take it down. A lot of the decks that previously saw no play whatsoever in Japan had a pretty good matchup into Yellow Hybrid. We'll talk about those, of course, and I think the biggest reason for that is because Ice Wall is no longer in the meta. Right, Ice Wall gate kept a lot of different decks, and now that Ice Wall is removed, a lot of the decks that would normally counter Yellow Hybrid will now be coming to the forefront. But Yellow Hybrid, still very powerful deck, and it is we'll use this as the baseline for how we're going to grade a lot of these. If you can keep up with Yellow Hybrid, you're probably able to stay within the A tier category or tier 1 category, right? I think that's fair.
I agree.
Okay, so then with that, the next deck we're going to talk about is actually Lordknightmon. So Lordknightmon, terrorized the entire BT5 format. People still have nightmares of this card. And of course, we saw a lot less of it during the BT6 iteration with Bond and everything running around. However, Lordknightmon will make its prominent return in the BT7 format, if I had to take a guess from all of the testing we've done. And the reason for that is because of the introduction of the card Electric Rush. Electric Rush is a 2-cost yellow option that gives one of your Digimon 3000 DP, and if you are exactly at 3 security, restand this Digimon. So that means Lordknightmon will be able to restand. Neither Lordknightmon nor Agubond are once per turn, so with Electric Rush, you can actually spawn 4 bodies before you end your turn. Then you may ask, wait, but how do you get the extra 2 memory and not pass your turn? Well, it's thanks to Pulsemon from the BT7 set, who gives you ESS on attack if you are exactly 3 security, gain 2 memory, so it pays itself off for the Electric Rush. In testing, what ended up happening was Lordknightmon was able to generate entire boards of 5-6 additional Digimon per turn. It was really powerful, but it is still a combo deck, so if you don't see the Electric Rush, it does feel a little bit underwhelming. But if you do see the Electric Rush, then definitely you are teetering into that tier 1 territory. Zero, do you have any thoughts on the Lordknightmon deck?
Yeah, I actually tested this quite a bit after learning about it, because this was prominently featured on one of the DPP video, right, as a deck that performed relatively well. And honestly, I did not expect it. This deck completely took me by surprise. I did not expect it to perform the way it did, but it does have a very high roll potential. Is pretty insane, right? For the deck, because if you open, your Agubond, your Blinding Ray, your Electric Rush, and your Nightmons, this deck can just start spiraling out of control and just generate a gigantic board. It actually deal with yellow very well. Yellow hybrid actually was struggling to this matchup because you really don't have a way to just stop them from gaining value, right? Because yellow hybrid is not a deck that excel at doing a bunch of security check at once. The way you play the game is you do incremental poke and you start to grind out the game and win the game, right? And use your option to control the board. Well, if you don't open your option that clear the board all your low level Digimon that Lord Knight generate, you can put yourself in you get put in a position where they just generate a really wide board that just threaten to lead to you in one turn, then prevent you from healing back up.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. And in testing versus blue, it wasn't lopsided one way or another, but this deck opening decently well can actually keep up with hybrid blue, which is very surprising to me. I didn't expect that at all. But turns out without Ice Wall, the amount of bodies this deck is able to generate can actually overwhelm blue fairly weak security.
Yeah, so like I said before, Ice Wall was one of the biggest gatekeepers to the BT7 format. Now that Ice Wall is now at 1, decks like Lordknightmon are able to shine a lot more. In testing, what ended up happening was the blue hybrid deck was unable to stun 7 bodies on board. Not enough Source Strip or Korikakus to pass that around. And so as a result, I think Lordknightmon will find itself in the upper echelons of Tier 2. It's not Tier 1, and the reason for that is because it heavily relies on seeing the Electric Rush and Blinding Array in order to enable all of its plays. If it doesn't see those, then it does fall a bit short, but if it does see those, then the ceiling is absolutely insane. So I think, within the upper realms of Tier 2, I think it's very fair for this deck. You agree, Zero?
Yeah, and for the play style, I know it's not exactly a 1-for-1, but the play style is very similar to Jesmon, where you're trying to hope to see a bunch of your combo pieces. But why when you just play Jesmon, right? If that's the kind of deck that you're gonna play, because Jesmon, if you see all your pieces, you just win the game. As opposed to Lord Knight, where you have to generate a big board and then hope you punch through your opponent. So it's kind of like playing budget Jesmon in a way.
And speaking of Jesmon, that's actually the next deck that we're going to talk about. If I were doing this tier list by myself, I'd probably put Jesmon as best deck in the format. Unfortunately, my lawyers have instructed me not to do so. And so, Jesmon is a deck that did receive new support in the BT7 format. They got 2 new additional sisters in the form of Sistermon CL Awakened and Blanc Awakened, as well as a new level 3 Hackmon. The Hackmon is able to search for your sisters, and Sister Seal pops a level 4 or lower, and then Sister Blanc is able to heal 1. So really good flexibility and toolbox-like nature Jesmon was able to add. Consistency is boosted across the board. Overall, Jesmon got very huge buffs from this set. Jesmon also has a very excellent match up into Yellow Hybrid because they're not able to actually punish you in time before you combo on top of them. But. While this all sounds good and dandy, Jesmon is still Jesmon. In a best of 3 format, you are very likely to brick in one of your rounds a little too much. If you're in an 8-round tournament setting, if you brick even one of those rounds, then you are hurting yourself a lot. So Jesmon, highest ceiling in the game, still, nothing can ever top that, but definitely the floor is a lot lower than you'd want it to be, and because of its floor, I think it prevents it from ever actually being a best deck in the format. But because of its ceiling, I don't think it'll ever be tier 2. Of course, Savior is still at 4 during the BT7 format. Savior will go down to 1 during BT8. Do you have anything you want to say about this one?
Yeah, I mean, the deck did get a little bit more consistent, but it didn't actually get any way to search out your most important piece, which is Savior, which is at 4. And, your Jesmon, right? Being able to get the sister, very nice. But on more than one occasion, I've seen the new Hookmon go off. Look at top 5 and bot deck a Savior, and you're just very sad because that happens, right?
So another point I did want to make is that during the Japanese format, obviously, we had a little bit of a triangle going on. Jesmon beat Yellow, Blue Hybrid beat Jesmon, and then Yellow Hybrid beat Blue Hybrid. With Blue Hybrid losing their Ice Wall, that is a tad bit of a nerf to that color, but the deck still does very well into Jesmon. So with that being said, I think Jesmon will find itself comfortably within the Tier 1 territory, but it is not best deck in the format.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, even if you look at national representation, Jesmon had very little result for a deck that was prominently featured in Tier 1 for most people tier list in BT06, right? Like at BT06, EX1, almost everybody had Jesmon in their Tier 1, right? And for the... and you can't even say the deck is not popular, because I think Jesmon is a very popular deck that see quite a bit of play, but for the amount of representation it has, and for the placement in the tier list, it did not perform up to par.
Right.
And I think we might end up seeing similar result in this meta, because I just don't think there's enough addition to the deck to where, hey, like this deck is now certainly much more consistent. It's a little bit more consistent, but it still has a lot of the same problems.
So I actually think there actually is a difference between BT6 and BT7, being that BT7 feels like a slower format to a certain extent, because people are setting up their tamers instead and whatnot. When you're setting up tamers, that means you're not pressing for tempo against Jesmon, and that gives Jesmon a little bit more breathing room. I think Nationals was a huge flop for Jesmon, because Nationals was total of 15 rounds. Jesmon's not going to survive 15 rounds. I think we saw a single Jesmon in day 2, and it was the player school appropriate. And unfortunately, they were not able to make it to top 8, but it really just goes to show that Jesmon in a huge tournament setting like that is not the play. But I definitely do think Jesmon will thrive much more in the BT7 format than it did in the BT6 format, just because the format is a tad bit slower when you're playing against Hybrid, right?
I would agree, but there's always adaptation to be made to be more aggressive.
Right. Okay, but, we don't want to spend too much time on Jesmon. The next deck that we're going to talk about is Agubond. So Agubond in the BT6 format was a very huge sleeper deck, in my opinion. I thought it was the dark horse to take the entire tournament, to be fair. We saw Dan Veng pilot it all the way to top 8. Unfortunately, he ended up losing to Human on Lilith Loop. But Agubond, I don't think is going to perform as well in this format in comparison to its previous iteration in BT6, because what are you popping? Right? Like, Agubond can't pop a tamer, so you're kind of losing value there. I mean, like, you still have Promo Greymon, sure, but any red deck can play Promo Greymon, so what is Agubond really, like, gaining from it, right? Because if there's no Digimon for you to pop, then you can't get your burn off of Agubond, so you're just really wasting value there. I just feel like it's not a very hospitable meta to Agubond. There's not enough things for you to pop. You don't get advantage from all the removal that Agubond is able to provide. And because of that reason, I feel like Agubond ends up winding into the tier 3 category. What do you think?
I agree. The other issue with the Bond deck in particular, that is, if you ever try to do the wordplay and burn yourself with 2, you're at much higher risk of getting lethal now in the hybrid meta, because previously the only deck that could do it was red and blue, right, to get hybrid lethal off of you, but now you have that possibility across every color, but more prominently 5 color, right, that we're gonna list. And the problem with that is that your opponent having a rookie in raising and then 2 tamers set up means that a lot of those decks have the ability to just randomly lethal you from 2 security, and no amount of security check is going to help you against hybrid. Like outside of just randomly getting a heal, right? And red don't have access to that, so the atomic blaster is not going to save you,
right?
Like if you play into like a blue hybrid, for example, a rookie move out swing, hammer spark into double hybrid, and that's game, like every single time, right?
Yeah, there's just not enough going for Agubond to warrant really playing it in this format. But, Agubond aside, we are going to talk about Lilith Loop, actually, which receives a huge buff in the BT7 format. Hello, Jesmon, right? Jesmon is absolutely disgusting. It is probably the strongest engine in the purple deck. We actually do see Jesmon engine getting hit in BT8, but it's not BT8. We're in BT7, so Jesmon is at full power. Jesmon is basically Graceful Charity on legs that also summons a bunch of bodies. And you can use those bodies to create what is now known as the Cerberus loop, where you have Jesmon, Digivolve into Cerberus, pop Cerberus with Werewolf. Okay, Cerberus, discard, discard 1, right? Discard 1, discard Jesmon, summon Jesmon, Digivolve Jesmon back into Cerberus, and rinse and repeat. All the werewolf modes have Rush, and you can extend all of your different lines of play from there. It's absolutely disgusting. Lilith Loop sees a really huge buff in that. Of course, we lost MDF. Mega Digimon Fusion is now gone. It is at 0 because of Susanomon abusing it. But that's okay, to be honest. You have win rate still at this point, and win rate is still an absolutely disgusting card in this deck. Not only that, but you also have access to all 4 of your Jack raids, and Ultimate Sacrifice with Werewolf mode is a +1 memory, unironically.
And also, let's not forget, we get Return to Darkness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Return from Darkness is super broken for this deck. What? Pop one of your Digimon, and then grab back 2 purple Digimon from your trash. Even if you have 0 cards on your board, you can still grab back 2. Absolutely disgusting card. That card is not fair. That card, if purple gets a hit again, it's that card. That card's going next.
Yeah. This deck is, if you're familiar with Lilith Loop and watching at National, right? Like you're thinking like, oh man, Lilith Loop takes a little bit of time to set up and etc. and do all this to. It's a fairly slow deck, right? Not the case in BT07.
No, God, it's so much faster.
BT07 Loop can with the right draw can pop off insanely fast, and it'll just run you down. This deck is absolutely nutty. The only downside I would say to this deck is that I think is quite high skill cap. Well, obviously, an advanced player like Human would definitely be able to pilot this deck and see a lot of success with it. But I think in order to play this deck well, you need quite a bit of practice. And it's not so much the loop, right? Once you get to the loop, it's kind of fairly obvious, like the sequence of cards that you need to do to get your stuff out once you learn it. But it's more so with this type of deck, the main skill gap is going to be how to play out bricks and how to play your deck efficiently enough to maximize your ability to get to your loop as quickly as possible. And that's probably one of the things that's going to keep this deck from dominating the meta, is because it's not a deck that everybody just pick up and play at extremely high level, right?
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly agree with that. Loop is not an easy deck. It is probably the most technical deck in the Digimon card game at the moment. I think it's very easy to say Loop is... I think Loop is very easily a top 3 deck in this format. All the hybrids are like I said, a lot slower than the BT6 decks that we did see, so that gives Loop even more time to set up, on top of Loop being a lot faster. I think Loop, if it were, a lot easier to pilot, I think it'd probably be the best deck in the format, but it's not easy to pilot. So I also just think Tier 1 is very, very close. The ban list was very, very impactful. Both Zero and I definitely underestimated the impact of that ban list. I think a lot of people did, really.
Yeah. In testing, the Ice Wall hit was huge.
It was super big. He says that, but he found Ice Wall. He found the one of Ice Wall and the one of Reinforced Memory Boost way too often. Insecurity, by the way.
Just be a good player and enjoy your one of Ice Wall.
Okay, well, anyway, so Tier 1, very, very close. I don't think there's a clear, definitive best deck in the format. I just don't see it. So
there might be, as the meta develop and people build to counter certain thing, and something just rise to the top. But granted, 1 week is very limited amount of. So it's still fairly limited amount of testing, and maybe something gets solved and that we overlook, because again, it's just a few of us play testing. But currently, I don't see anything that's just like, hey, this is the definite clear best deck. Nothing can contest it. Yada yada.
Yeah, because for example, you're playing Lilith Loop. Oh, is that Ancient Greymon? Oh.
Yeah. It's gonna punch you for 5 security.
Funny. Anyway, so previously what was considered the best deck in the format for BT6. It is Gabubond. Gabubond, for a lot of people, I saw them put it in like really high tiers. I don't know if you saw that. A lot of people put it in their A or S tier. I thought that was kind of weird. I don't know why.
I know why.
Why?
Because if you look at Japanese result, this deck performed well into the BT7 meta.
But I think there's something missing. From our meta and their meta. What could it be? I think it starts with an I.
I have no idea what you're
I have no idea what it could be. So anyway, yeah. So Ice Wall being gone means Gabubond doesn't get to have that unfair advantage against non-blue decks. With Ice Wall removed from the format and bot decking losing a lot of value because you can't bot deck a Tamer, I think Gabubond is probably going to find itself in tier 2, solely because it has the ability to still attack 3 times. If it weren't for that, I think it would be joining Agubond down in tier 3. I don't think Gabubond will do very well without Ice Wall. I think it's like maybe mid tier 2 at best.
Yeah, I know this is gonna be one of those controversial picks that I think people will definitely contest this on this, but just from experience playing the deck, losing Ice Wall is definitely a huge hit. And the other part is that people is like, well, why have you just like the meta is slower, right? Where you just play aggro and you set up Gabubond for lethal. I mean, that's nice and it'll win you some games, but the issue you run into is that you're gonna run into a deck like Yellow Hybrid, for example, where your incremental Rookie Rush style poke is just gonna give them way too much advantage, and they're just gonna heal back out of lethal, while accruing massive advantage with card like TK and Kari, right? Like huge amount of memory, and they're just gonna set up and put themselves constantly out of lethal range, while you just lose steam and resource as you're trying to race them, and like in this game where you just can't possibly win. And then other tier 1 deck have the potential to just blow you up, like. You play into Red Hybrid, and freaking Ancient come out on turn 2 and just smack you for 4 security. What do you do from that position? Like, are you supposed to set up your Tamer and your Bond now, and like try to do something when they have like lethal, in the turn or 2?
No,
like,
you just enter scoop phase. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Like other decks like Blue Hybrid have out to that situation because they have more board control and way to deal with stuff that's not exist on board, and they're much better at. They don't have to develop on board to pressure for lethal. Well, because they can just play Tamer. Well, Gabubond doesn't have that luxury. For Gabubond to like try to threaten lethal against some of these decks, they have to play multiple rookies on board, and I mean they're rookies, they're not exactly difficult to remove.
Yeah. So with everything being said, I think Gabubond staying in tier 2 is honestly kind of generous. I'll be honest.
I think it's still good enough to where it always have that potential where, hey, you just open up the mat and the warp on turn 2 and you just do 3 swing and you can just rush your opponent down before they can come back up. So that the ability is still there, but I think the deck ceiling overall is just not significantly higher than everything else right now, to where like that's enough to win you the game.
Yeah. Okay. So the next deck that we are going to talk about is another BT6 deck. It is Titamon. So Titamon does receive a significant buff in the form of the Eismon engine as well as Nidhoggmon. With Titamon no longer having to deal with Ice Wall, that means it is able to swing twice with the Black War Graumon and deal a lot of damage, and you can use the Eismon engine to continue and facilitate all of its plays. So Titamon in theory is very, very, very strong with the Eismon engine and everything. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of data for us to work with during the Japanese iteration of BT7 because Ice Wall really hurt Titamon, and we haven't had a lot of time to spend on Titamon testing. We've been spending a lot more time on the new decks from BT7, but in theory, Titamon should be a very, very excellent deck. But given the fact that we don't have a lot of supporting evidence, I think we can't put Titamon in tier 1. But at the very least, it can probably go into like high tier 2, right?
Right. So remember what I said about Lordknight? It's like, why would you play Lordknight over Jesmon, right? Well, Titamon, in a lot of ways, is very similar to Jesmon, right? It is a deck that generate bodies. You're swinging for extra security check, and if you're on Warground, you're swinging multiple times, right? Well, the reason that you would play this deck over Jesmon is this deck is incredibly consistent in BT07 because of your access to, you know, the Icemon engine and all these new discard support. You're just going to be filtering to get all your pieces out like crazy, and then, you know, you have cards like win rate, which allow you to evolve into the Titamon for cheap without passing your turn. You know, you go off like again. You know, Hayes, one of the player from our Discord, made a very good Titamon list for BT06 National. It didn't pan out well, but I think that list with modification with in BT07 and all the new support it got has a lot of potential to do really well. It's just that we don't have any data to support it to say it's tier 1.
Right, but another purple deck coming from the BT6 format is Musketeers. So Musketeers, of course, being a purple deck, receives the buff in the form of the Icemon engine. Icemon being able to discard all of your level 7, all your 7 cost options, as well as your Musketeers, accelerates your win con a lot faster. But Musketeers is still a, somewhat of a one-dimensional deck, right? I know Tessero, you, and Karan, all Musketeer players who have played a lot of this deck, kind of wish you had defensive utility, right? Just some way to stave off aggression coming at you.
Yeah, this deck main issue is that your only way to play the game is that you hit your nail bone and you make a bunch of bodies, especially in this meta. Because, like, what the heck are you removing with your option in this meta? Like, they just have a bunch of tamers. Like, what are you gonna play your Bellstar for like 4 or 5, and then clear off a rookie with a 7 cost option? Like, I mean, is that what you're doing? Because a lot of times what happens is they just set up a bunch of tamers and start incrementally poking you, right? And you're removing it. Your security check doesn't matter because against hybrid, and so a lot of times your best line of play is to make a lot of bodies on board. So it's the Lord Knight strategy, and which is nice, but it doesn't exactly win the game because a lot of decks can just play around that, or play out of it, or just straight up kill you. Because again, defensively, you're not very strong defensively now because of hybrid.
Okay, so with all that being said, I think Musketeer is still a reasonably solid deck. Any deck that abuses Icemon, to be fair, is a pretty reasonably solid deck. And I think Musketeers will find itself within the mid tier 2 category.
Right, because it has the nailbone strategy will win you games. Because you can definitely flip board and threaten lethal into some decks. It's just that you risk of getting your entire board blown up by yellow hybrid, for example, or the time you spent setting up is giving Lilith all this time to set up their lethal, which is much more scary than your lethal.
Okay, so following up, we have a BT7 deck, finally. No more BT6 decks, at least for now. We have Emperor Greymon or Red Hybrid. So Red Hybrid is one of the new decks coming in the BT7 format, and it's a monster. It hits the hardest by far. Ancient Greymon, Emperor Greymon, all the security pressure. Ancient Greymon on turn 2 can whack your opponent for 3 security. If you hide it in raising, it's probably going to come out for 5. I mean, it's the most glass cannon of the hybrids, but it's definitely the hybrid with the highest ceiling, right?
Right.
So Red Hybrid, I know it's a bit expensive. Ancient Greymon is definitely on the pricier side of things, so that might actually hinder its results a little bit, keep people from playing the deck. But if we look at it isolated within a bubble on how the deck actually functions, how the deck will perform, I think Red Hybrid is very safely going to be a tier 1 deck. The issue with the Red Hybrid, because everything sounds great, right? Doing all this damage, you're playing hybrid, etc. It's fantastic and everything, but it's the most inconsistent of the hybrids. Only Bokomon can search out Ancient Greymon. And because of that, if you rely heavily on Ancient Greymon, which I think a lot of the top builds will, if you don't draw into your pieces correctly, you're kind of stuck. The deck building constraint when it comes to Ancient Greymon and Agubond is the fact that it consumes 8 of your slots, 8 of slots which could have been defensive utility or more consistency boosters, anything along those lines. But instead you dedicated it to winning the game outright on turn 2.
Yeah, I actually had the discussion about this deck with Tesla a while back. Well, he did mention, like he is playing the ancient variant, right, in his build. But there is a version that doesn't run the ancient package, and you have 8 more slots to run your other pieces and consistency booster. Obviously, your ceiling is much lower in that deck, but it's quite a bit more consistent. Now, whether that version is tier 1 or not, I'm not sure on. But it is possible to play this deck without the ancient package. So if you're a fan of this deck and you cannot afford the ancient gray package, do not feel discouraged. It's still very much playable. It's just not. I'm not sure if I would put that version in tier 1,
Right.
without more testing done.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Red Hybrid, still a very versatile deck. You have a lot of different ways to play with the build. And Ice Wall being gone is actually a really huge buff to the deck. Ice Wall, it's a reoccurring trend, but Ice Wall really gated Red Hybrid previously. And even then, it was still doing very, very well. So yeah, I look forward to seeing Red Hybrid doing some serious damage into the meta. But following Red Hybrid, we have Blue Hybrid, which was the biggest Ice Wall offender in the BT7 format. Between Agubond and Ice Wall, your opponent literally couldn't play the game. Super frustrating. Even I got frustrated. And I don't play the format super often. But losing MDF Susano combo and losing Ice Wall really hit the deck very hard, but it still has access to Korikaku Tommy and Magna Gabubond, still a very powerful card. I just think that maybe Blue Hybrid is going to need to reinvent itself a little bit, probably go back to the drawing board and try to find substitutes for the cards that you just lost.
Yeah, Starlight Velocity is a good option to test around with.
Yeah, 3 costs, get a Tamer back, right? Get a Tamer back, maybe call Beowulf, whatever the situation may be. If you happen to have Magna Gabubond underneath because you went for Koji, you can call back Magna Gabubond. That's also a really neat play.
Yeah, this is the deck that got hit the hardest. If you're not familiar with the BT7 meta in Japan, what this deck did was that it cut the Magna Gabubond package entirely and play only lower end hybrid, and it just start pressuring with the lower end hybrid, and while stunning your board with the Tommy Korikaku engine, right? Like they're getting their advantage out of that, while constantly drawing cards. Because it's blue, it draws quite a bit of cards, and because this deck draws so much, it is able to hit the Susano threshold extremely quickly. So then you would just use MDF, go into Susano, and then just lethal off of that play, like right from 3 security, right? Because Susano was swinging for 3, and then they'll just evolve a second hybrid and punch in for lethal. And then they had Ice Wall to keep their opponent from maintaining the same tempo. And I think the only deck that was able to contest it was Yellow, mostly because Yellow was able to heal a lot.
I mean, Yellow also just didn't care about Ice Wall, to be fair.
Yeah, it didn't care about Ice Wall. It didn't matter to them. And Yellow was able to just heal a lot and just constantly stay out of lethal range. So and they also also have access to MDF, even though their version of it was a little bit slower. So this deck got hit the hardest by the 2 major ban in this format, but it's still good.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy Korikaku, the ability to multi-swing off of Magna Gabubond, you have a lot of bounce removal. Overall, it's still a very, very effective deck. I definitely think it's arguably the weakest of the tier 1 hybrids. I think it's very arguable. A lot of debate on that situation. But nonetheless, it is still a tier 1 hybrid in my opinion. So
I think without modification, that might be true because you can't stick to.
Yeah, gotta go reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, the deck has access to a lot of good cards, so I don't know. It's hard for me to say like this deck is quote unquote weak. I think it's still competitive into the rest of tier 1.
100%. Like I said, I think tier 1 super close. But speaking of that, green hybrid, did this even exist in Japan? No, right?
If it did, it didn't exist at any significant capacity.
And so, pure green hybrid, tier 2 deck, at best. Pure green hybrid's bad best tier 2. Now let me tell ya, Hoang Zero cooking up some real sauce, courtesy of Desi and Spaghetti. Red base green hybrid is going to be the new tier 1 hybrid. All right, we have been playing this deck a lot, and we have been seeing a lot of success with it. I've been telling people to, hey, try out a Christmas hybrid, or some people call it Chili's hybrid, Quiznos hybrid, whatever you really want to call it. But Red base, green hybrid, I think is very much so going to be in the tier 1 category. Honestly, I put more money on it than Emperor and Magna Gabubond, dang. So what the red base ends up adding, and of course we'll do an entire video on this, but what the red base ends up adding is a lot of security pressure. Also, it gives you access to removal. Atomic Inferno is an absolutely insane card. It gives plus 3000 DP, and it gives you plus 1 security attack for 1 cost. And then if you hit insecurity, it gives your entire next turn plus 1 security attack. But what also the red engine lends itself to doing is it has way better searches than green. Green has Betamon to search. I mean, that's cool and everything. But red has Flamemon. A lot of Flamemons. Also BT1 Agumon. So red not only just has far greater search abilities, but also just gives you access to security pressure, atomic blaster, etc. You don't actually care about digivolving over your level 3s with your green hybrids. You want to digivolve over your tamers primarily, so you get your value off of Digimon like Beelmon or Rhino Kabuterimon. So red base green hybrid, I think definitively is going to be tier 1, and I think is the best way to play green hybrid. If you decide to play pure hybrid, I mean, that's just tier 2.
Yeah. One thing of significant of note with this deck in particular, JP allow you to evolve your hybrid for 1.
Oh yeah.
Which is so significant, right? Because at 3 memory, so every color has the ability to go from 4, 5 for 3, and go into a level 6, right? Well, with green in particular, you're able to go 4, 5. You have 1 memory left to play your Atomic Inferno, or you can play the green option,
Thunder Laser,
which set up. Which allow you to be very versatile in what you want to do. Then Rhino will evolve into your Ancient for 3 costs. So a lot of times what you would do is you just go to Rhino, play your Atomic Inferno, then go into Ancient Beetle, smack their whatever Digimon they have on board, burn the damage, and then pierce for 2 checks.
Yeah, so it's absolutely disgusting. And if it's not Beetle, you can go into Troya. It's just super
Troya
versatile.
give you board control pressure against like the Rookie Rush type of strategy, or just like wide board strategy is very good at dealing with that. So this is one of those decks. This is if anything, this might be the deck that keep the Rookie Rush strategy from being viable.
Yeah, I think green red hybrid is going to be not only the cheapest of tier 1 deck, but also honestly, I'm biased. I'm super biased because I'm out here trying to shill it like a door salesman, right? But I think it's really good. And whenever
is it significantly cheaper than yellow hybrid? What's expensive in yellow hybrid?
TK.
Oh, that's true.
I don't have to pay TK. TK 4 TKs cost my entire deck. Oh, and Shine Greymon's expensive now too. But and Serafi. You know what? Yellow hybrid kind of expensive. But yeah, green red hybrid. I'll be posting a video on it. Hopefully tomorrow. That's whenever we get this really cool thumbnail done. But so we can talk about that a little bit more in depth. But yeah, green red hybrid. Tier 1. So coming up next, we do have Dark Knight D-Brigade. So Dark Knight D-Brigade, it is the evolution of the BT6 D-Brigade, where you're throwing your Commandramons, getting a lot of value, recursion, etc. Lordknightmon, what it ends up adding is it gives you an actual top end, unlike Tincturemon, which is kind of mediocre. Lordknightmon with the Skullknightmon gets plus 1 security attack as an ESS. With Deadly Axemon, if you even run it, which I assume you should, gives you, I believe it's plus 2000 DP, if I'm not mistaken. So between being able to spit out your Dark Knightmons for relatively cheap, because Skullknightmon is able to digicross, if you will, into it if you have Deadly Axemon on the board, and then Commandramon's getting a lot of poke down. Not only that, and all 3 Digimon, or both Dark Knightmon and Commandramons are very sticky, referring to BT4 Commandramon, which when destroyed summons a Commandramon, and Dark Knightmon, when destroyed, summons both Deadly and Skull Axemon and Knightmon. But yeah, so it's just a sticky deck, a lot of early game pressure. Time and time again, we continuously underestimate D-Brigade, and it continues to show results. I refuse to underestimate it ever again, so I feel it's a tier 2 deck.
I think at borderline tier 2 or tier 3. It needs to be seen. The deck is fine, but the issue that it run into is that it again is a deck that wants to develop on board, into a meta where just develop on board feels really bad. Because you're liable to just get your entire board stunned by blue Hyrule, for example, you know, or get your entire board popped by yellow. It just doesn't feel good. And that isn't to say is a bad deck. I think it can definitely win some game just because of the nature of Rookie Rush and being able to rush down your opponent before they can do anything. But that strategy is so much more easily punished in this meta than any previous meta, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think one thing that we forgot to mention, but it definitely should be noticed, is Schwartz Lahertz in yellow using purple base. That gives yellow the ability to clear wide boards. And, you know, against a deck like Lordknightmon, that could be really, really detrimental. So,
yeah, yellow hybrid does play purple X for that reason to activate that option.
Yeah, so you're either going to see pure yellow, and that has a lot more healing because of Salamon, or we're going to see purple with Gazimon and Schwartz. But coming up next, we do have Dorugora or the X-Antibody deck. So this is the theme that Black is going to get for the next 3 sets. Set 7 is Dorugora, set 8 we get Oryumon, and then set 9 we get Oryukin. But Dorugora is a lot of pressure because of Dorugreymon ESS, which gives +1 security attack, and it's super easy to stack multiple of them because you can just keep shoving them underneath. So on average, you're probably going to swing for 3 damage because Sonorizumon is included. So 3 damage on your first level 6 swing. You have some removal built into Dorugoramon, and the Dorugreymon makes it so you cannot be destroyed by card effects or DP reduced. So that's actually super huge. It means you can pull out of raising and be a lot more proactive in your approach like that. Now, given that X-Antibody is missing a lot of its support still, and the fact that the pop from Dorugoramon sees a lot less potency because of hybrid, I don't think it's a tier 1 deck at the current moment. Black, time and time again, has constantly surprised the North American scene when we're seeing adaptations like Alex Mendoza's Black Toolbox or Lychee King's Black Omni Turbo or Black Wargreymon Turbo. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone took Black and made it into a tournament winner. But as far as the start of the BT7 scene begins, I think it's probably somewhere in mid to high tier 2. You know, being a little generous about it, I think. What do you think, Zero?
My issue with this deck is that it's just not consistent enough because of the lack of pieces and lack of searcher in BT07. It's certainly fine, but also for playing what is fairly not consistent, your reward for playing it is just not high enough. Right, like you're playing a deck that basically trying to mimic the Jesmon strategy. Your ratio is obviously not as bad as Jesmon, but again, you're still searching for very specific pieces. You're relying on seeing one specific level 5, exactly the way that Jesmon is relying on Savior, but your ceiling is nowhere near as high. So I struggle to see this deck performing well into the meta. I would honestly put it low in tier 2, maybe even high tier 3.
Really?
Personally.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't think the strategy is that viable in this meta. It's just not consistent enough. And in the game, when you do go off, you don't exactly win. Like, so what are you doing that exactly, right? You're swinging for multiple security, but your protection only lasts 1 turn. After that 1 turn and your stat get removed, you have to rebuild your stack back up. So it's not like it's consistent protection against removal. You try to play this into yellow hybrid, you know, like they heal back up and wait until they can remove your stack and just pop your stack. Other decks can, like red hybrid, can actually outrace you in terms of generating security pressure. So I just don't think is that valid of a strategy in BT07 personally.
Yeah, and that's super valid. I can agree with a lot of those points. I want to be generous, give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt. So probably like mid tier 2. I think it's probably as high as I would go on this.
I don't think it's better than Gabubond, but okay.
I mean, are we gonna play Gabubond either? To be fair,
that's right. It's around that tier.
It's somewhere there. Yeah. But more importantly, a rogue deck I actually am super excited for is Cherubimon. Now, I don't know why. I don't know what possesses people to do this, but every set, my server decides there is a single purple deck they really want to solve. You know, in BT6, it was Titamon. They spent a lot of time on Titamon. And BT7, they decided Cherubimon was going to be the deck to solve.
I should just make a channel called Purple Cope channel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we just call it Purple Cope? But yeah, so the efforts of Dewey or D-Win and Hayes managed to create a Cherubimon deck that had an 80% win rate versus Yellow Hybrid, and Yellow Hybrid being arguably the most popular deck of the format going into BT7. That's super huge, right? Like that, you cannot dismiss that. 80% against what is arguably the best deck in the format is enormous. And
Yeah.
what makes it have that, right? Because I mean, Cherubi didn't do super well in Japan. Why is that? Well, it's because they were playing purple based. The real secret is you play yellow based Cherubimon, and what that does, Cherubimon being a pinata deck, it means it needs time to set up your trash, get your plays going, right? And purple just was kind of fragile. What yellow ends up adding is yellow gives you a lot more longevity. You have Salamon, you have Cutemon to try and drag the game out, and then you have Bushi Agumons. So what happens is when the pinata is full of candy, you pop the pinata, and all these level 3s with really good effects start pouring out. Salamon, Cutemons, Bokomons, and Bushi Agumons. And you can also pop your pinata using cards like Deathclaw or Call by Darkness. And because it's purple, that also means you can add in text like Rebellymon or Neo-Devimon. So I think Cherubimon is actually going to be one of the sleeper decks of the format. Obviously not tier 1, but I'm pretty...
It's a little slow,
yeah,
and it can be bricky at times. I would say the one distinct advantage that this has over other hybrid deck is that if you play the various hybrid deck, that there's some tamer you just don't want to evolve over because it just feels bad. Like your memory tamer, you don't want to evolve over your memory tamer and lose a stack, for example. This deck does not have that issue. In fact, sometimes you want to evolve over Mat to get recursion because Rihimon allow you just to play any tamer when it dies. So a lot of time what you do is you evolve to Rihimon, swing, maybe even forcibly pop the stack yourself to get the recursion on the tamer. So it's a little bit more versatile in that sense, and the ability to recur your tamer effect. And the pop-off turn is, you just have to see it, but the pop-off turn is incredibly satisfying because you can play multiple Pokemon from your trash. You play multiple Bushi Agumon, just crazy amount of lethal pressure randomly.
It's a pinata. It's a literal pinata.
Yeah, like the moment your Cherubimon dies, everything just go off at once. It's definitely insane. But I've tested quite a bit. I like it, but again, because it's purple, kind of weak defensively. That's why you're playing the yellow base just to get healing, because this deck can randomly just die to aggro. Like, let's be real. Like, sometimes you play against red hybrid and they get the ancient, they just smack you down. There's literally nothing you can do because you're a setup deck. So it has certain amount of weakness, and I would not put it in tier 1 for that reason.
Yeah, but I think given the fact that it is arguably the best yellow hybrid matchup in the format, I'm pretty confident around this upper tier 2 area, right?
It's a deck that will farm slower setup decks because it's probably the best slow setup deck in the meta, not counting Lilith Loop, because I don't think Lilith Loop is slow at all.
Right, and so I think a lot of people won't know what Cherubimon actually does or is capable of, and so they'll end up playing into the pinata, and from there, it's able to just pop off. But coming up next, we're back in the EX format. Machinedramon. Machinedramon actually did receive new support in the form of Chaosdramon. Chaosdramon is able to digivolve over your Machinedramon for 1, I believe, if you digivolve over Machinedramon. And if you do, it's able to pop a level, I want to say level 5 and below for every 5 you possess. I could be wrong. I know it pops something. Let me double check on that. But
it delete is 6,000 DP.
6,000 DP. Okay, there you go. So
yeah, it's not level 5. It's significantly worse.
Okay. Well, what Chaosdramon ends up enabling is Kaiser Nail Machinedramon. What Kaiser Nail Machinedramon does is after you digivolve something on top of Machinedramon, you Kaiser Nail or Wolfclaw, I don't remember which one the English name is, and then you can replay the Machinedramon from underneath, and then you can use Machinedramon ability to grab back all the sources. So then you potentially have 2 tower-like stacks going on, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty nifty. But what's the payoff besides like looking cool?
It's okay. You get one big blocker stack while hybrid just run you down with multiple.
I mean, yeah, like green goes, oh, cool, Atomic Inferno, oh, you blocked, okay, +3 memory, okay, cool, thanks. Or Thunder Laser, Emperor Greymon swings, oh, cool, nifty. Magna Gurumon bounce, like, I don't know. I guess yellow hybrid can't get through it, but you're gonna get eaten by the rest of the format, it feels like. But, hey, I have more faith in it than Agubond, so, you know, take that as you will. Gotcha green. I don't think this will do well.
Tier 3.
It's an immediate tier 3 for me. I don't think this will do well.
Let's just get this out of the way. This is an RNG deck. You're hoping to high roll, and even your high roll is not that impressive.
No, it's not. A lot of people, I don't know why. You know, certain people, I won't name them by names, but you know, may start with a T. They're coping with Ebon Wumon, and Ebon Wumon is a really bad card. It is so much worse in practice than you'd imagine, right? Like,
let's put all that aside. Like this, we know this is RNG, but assuming you have your perfect setup, right, and you cheat your way into an Ebon Wumon, okay, what then? What are you doing with it? How do you win the game?
Well, you see, you're able to stun one card, by the way, and if your opponent wants to restand, they have to discard a card.
Yeah, in the meta where the primary strategy is going to hybrid and just swinging.
Hey, whoa. Come on, bro.
Yeah, and Ebon Woob, it doesn't even have protection, so it just dies to any sort of removal, really.
Yeah, so if you go, I mean, like, let's hypothetically say, okay, you gotcha into Nidhogg. Oh, cool, I'm gonna wipe the one Bokomon?
Yeah, you're gonna wipe like 2 rookie that they didn't care to lose.
What if you go into Mega Gargomon? There's nothing for me to stun because they're hybrids and they're all just all tamers, huh? Oh, so that means I don't get my +1 security attack either.
Yeah, and if you don't get your pieces and you don't get the top deck set up, you are swinging with a 5k level 5.
Yeah, the only reason it's even on this tier list, to be honest, is because enough people are coping about it, and I'm just here to crush all your dreams, to be honest. But the last,
it would be really funny if this deck just randomly get a result because it's somehow
somehow luck sucks. But
wait, what can it sack into realistically? How does this deck win? How does this deck win against a tier 1 deck?
Okay. I got it. You gotcha into Ancient Beetlemon and pretend you're green hybrid.
Yeah, or just play green hybrid and go to
no. See, if you gotcha into green hybrid, then you could say you're playing gotcha, and it sounds a lot cooler. So, you know.
It doesn't even have piercing because you don't have JP underneath.
No. It's so bad. It's so bad. Okay, the last dream we're here to crush. Security control. Security control is North America's, like, favorite child for some reason. Everyone, a lot more people than you'd expect like security control in North America. I don't know why, but you do. And I'm here to tell you, it's not super great in BT7. Because security control is all about, you know, punishing your opponent whenever they swing, you know, popping their board, etc., right? You know, between Iron Fisted Onslaught, Wyvern's Breath, etc. What are you popping?
Man, that Iron Fist Onslaught is going to kill that level 4 hybrid that they just swung with.
Yeah, like, what are you popping? I mean, Red Hybrid has Aldemon, which nullifies all options from security, so you're not doing anything against that matchup.
Jesmon will kill you.
Jesmon will just flat out swat you, yeah. Lilithmon can do the same. Yellow Hybrid can probably outgrind you, to be honest.
Green burns.
Yeah, green burns.
Green burn at least 1. I mean, green might be one of your better matchup because it only burn 1 and it does check multiple security, but like, do they care if they lose the Beetle?
If you swing Beetle under Atomic Inferno, you're 16k, so you actually dodge Wyvern's Breath, unironically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lilith Loop just straight up kill you.
I mean, maybe you sack Magna Gurumon, but even then they're playing hybrid, so it's just inherently a bad matchup.
I don't think Blue Hybrid care about losing Magna.
No,
to be honest,
I don't think they do either. Yeah, so the security control is like looking like somewhere tier 3. Yeah.
I think it might be one of the worst choice into this meta.
I think it's not fantastic. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. With that. What does it beat? It doesn't beat Cherubi.
It probably doesn't beat Lordknightmon, given that they can spew out a body of what, like 6?
Yeah.
Does it beat? I mean, I guess it beats Titamon if Titamon doesn't have 80.
I guess could it play the purple option to clear white boy? But it doesn't set up enough tamers.
Yeah, you don't set up enough tamers to get value from it, so
it's just way too slow. Why would you play this over yellow hybrid?
Yeah, I'm not seeing an actual reason. But hey, we got through the tier list, so you know we're almost an entire hour into this video, and I think this tier list is pretty solid. I think, you know, given that the set hasn't dropped yet, and we'll probably see a lot of meta adaptations throughout the course of the set, I think this is a very strong preliminary tier list. Do you have any final thoughts about this, Zero?
If we're wrong, come back and roast us in the comment later.
I mean, hey, if we're wrong and green hybrid turns out to be the best deck in the format, then we were right either way. So, you know, that'll just be the way the cookie crumbles. But anyway, thank you guys so much for coming and watching and staying throughout this entire video. We really do appreciate all the support that you guys provide to us, and BT7's been really fun. I actually am really excited for BT7. I thought I wouldn't enjoy this format because of JP, how their format ended up going, but it turns out when you don't have problem cards in the format, it's pretty good. It's actually really fun.
I have to actually pace myself from testing this meta too much because I'm really excited to get the cards in real life.
Yeah, I don't want to burn out.
A lot. Yeah, there's several decks that I want to test right now. So I'm just waiting for the cards to drop. You know, no more delay, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but anywho, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a you know, wonderful rest of your week. So take it easy.
Yeah. Come see us in Arlington.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, we're gonna be me, Zero, and I are gonna be at Arlington. I'm gonna be commentating. Zero will be playing. If Zero scrubs out, then I get to say it over the loudspeaker. So hey.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right, so take it easy.
Okay, see you guys.